Good evening and welcome to Money Matters. I'm Charlie Huntington. I'm a board member and co-founder of BioStrategy Partners. BioStrategy Partners is a not-for-profit focused on helping early life science companies achieve their goals. I'd like to welcome my co-host tonight, Kimon Hatza.
Hi, Charlie.
Good evening, Kimon. Kimon is a life science attorney, a general business attorney, and your practice, MillCrest Law, is in Radnor, Pennsylvania.
That's correct.
And we have now hosted this show together now for 2 years or so.
2 years.
And we have typically we're focused on life science topics. Tonight, though, we're going to broaden this a bit, and we're going to talk general business with our soon-to-be introduced guest from Greater Philadelphia Senior Executives Group. So we're looking forward to that.
I think it'll be a nice change of pace and a good show.
Before I do introduce our special guest, I want to remind viewers that from time to time financial issues relating to life science, healthcare, or general business matters may be discussed on the show. These discussions are not and should be not viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since this program is pre-recorded and shown at a later date, please keep in mind that the information may be dated. You should always check with your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. I want to remind our viewers that they could send questions which will be addressed on upcoming shows to Money Matters at 205 East Levering Mill Road, Bala Cynwyd, Pennsylvania, 19004, or they can email their questions to moneymatterstv@gmail.com. It's my special pleasure to introduce Diane James. Diane is a executive director, of the Greater Philadelphia Senior Executives Group. We will refer to it as GPSEG throughout the show. Her background includes 2 years of executive recruiter and search consultant experience placing CEOs in associations and not-for-profits. She has 7 years of experience on 3 different organizations, at 3 different organizations focused on advancing women in non-traditional businesses. She also has 7 years working for societies of association executives on both the state and federal levels. She was the vice president of strategic alliances and allied partners for the American Society of Association Executives. She was executive director of Women in Cable Telecommunications, as well as the executive director for the Jacobs Institute of Women's Health. She was CEO of the Women's Transportation Seminar Foundation. She was director of the Executive Leadership Services for Association Strategies Incorporated, and she has her BA in Business and Human Resources from Oglethorpe University. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
Diane, could you tell our viewers about GPSEG?
Absolutely. GPSEG, or the Greater Philadelphia Senior Executive Group, is about 10 years old. Was founded by Chris Pavlidis, who was a business executive, found himself in transition and was eager to find a stronger network in the Philadelphia area and created the group. It quickly grew from people who fit in his living room on to 1,450 people that we now have as members today. The vision, mission, if you will, of the organization is really to help our members build their professional and personal networks so that they can achieve their goals. And a primary focus of that really is in giving back. So a focus of the organization's tenets and the way in which we communicate with one another and conduct our meetings is really within that spirit of giving back. We have meetings and events. Almost every weekday of every month you'll find a meeting that GPSEG is holding. Some of them are in special interest areas that are focused around, for example, finance or life sciences, CEOs, CIOs, and so forth. Some of them are organization-wide to which all the members attend.
Great.
Now, a few minutes ago, Charlie ticked off an impressive array of of companies that you've, or organizations that you've led.
Yes.
Whether as an executive director or in another executive or administrative capacity. A number of those organizations were either nonprofit organizations or industry organizations.
Right.
And many of them had a diversity component to them.
That's right.
I was wondering what led to your decision to leave, those types of organizations and to come to the Philadelphia area to lead GPSEG.
It was an interesting transition, to say the least. My most recent job was in executive recruitment and placement for 2 years, and that has certainly given me a lot of insight into what happens to people who are in the career development process. But prior to that, in those organizations, as you mentioned, the focus was on diversity, particularly in those cases advancing women in non-traditionally women-focused occupations. And what I learned from that experience that's really been helpful and was a driver for me to think about an organization like GPSEG is that in those situations, what really women needed to do, and what I found is actually common among all people in business to succeed, is they need a couple of things now. One is successful business people have to not only have their technical expertise, but they really have to be expert across a wide range of business skills. That includes knowing how to budget, knowing how to negotiate, knowing how to manage people, bringing emotional intelligence into inner dynamics, understanding diverse workforces, intergenerational challenges, changes in work ethic, the broader economic picture. And we don't always learn those as we're climbing the ladder. And so working in associations that are focused on career development and professional development, I really began to understand how important that change was for people to broaden their skills. And there's no place better to do that than in a professional society. GPSEG is an enormous asset with respect to that, in terms of all of those various business backgrounds of its members that combine into a professional development curriculum that covers all of those broad bases. Secondly, what I learned, particularly in organizations focused on diversity, is how important it is to have a network. And traditionally, in networking that people have done for business, they tended to be grouped with people who looked and sounded like them. And so when you introduce some group of people, in the cases of the organizations I worked with happened to be women, but it could be young people, it could be any group of people. They found it hard to get into those networks. They didn't happen very naturally. And so what we would do that I have found applicable to GPSEG is to think very strategically about the kinds of networks you want to build. Go out and seek out people that you can build a network with who are different than you. And it's very important for people to have mentors, people who will lend a hand, reach out to them, help them along the way, recommend them for jobs, critique their resumes, give them good career advice. And that is what is so key and core to the GPSEG membership, is people have that mentality, they have that interest in helping and reaching out. And because they've been successful in business, they're able to do that for each other.
What is networking to you?
It's really a process by which I think you build an ever-growing group of relationships. I think we think about networking as what you do when you go to a party or you go to a meeting and you introduce and shake hands and you get a business card and you go home and you wonder, where did I get this from, right? So networking, if you do it well and do it right, has to be about following up with those people, about connecting with those people and starting to build a relationship. No one's going to trust you because they shook hands with you at a cocktail party or a meeting, but they will trust you if you've sat down with them over time, you've asked them about them, you've offered to help them. I think of it a little bit like a retirement account. If you start early and you keep putting in a little at a time, by the time you really need it, you've built up quite a nest egg and it's earned interest for you and you can reap the dividends. If you wait till you're about 75 and then think about it, you've got nothing to be able to dip into. So I think that's the way people have to conduct their entire business career. From start to finish, they need to be building that network. They need to be thinking about what they can bring to the people in their network, how they can connect to people who might not know each other that they might know, and relate, how they can recommend people for jobs, how they can be a really good steward of the relationship, and that will lead to being able to tap into it often and when you need to.
I think that's a really great description. I know a lot of people, probably myself included, when I first got started, as a practicing attorney, view it as, oh, I go to a cocktail party,
Right.
I exchange my card with somebody, then what happens?
Right.
It really is a long process, and there are those people. There are those people that are so charismatic that they can walk into a room and walk out with some sort of business or whatever that happens to be their
Sure.
business. But
They're
most,
rare.
but most people can't do that. But if you do the types of things that you describe and you're persistent and you do it over a long period of time, almost everybody can build those kinds of relationships that can be of value to them at some point down the road.
It's absolutely, it's so true, and I found it from my own personal experience to be that way. I was working in an organization that merged into another organization. I didn't do anything to lose my job, but suddenly I really needed to figure out what my next step was going to be. I had built up a network, and when I needed it, all I had to say was, I'm out there looking, anybody have any suggestions? And, they come. And that's the experience that I hear from a lot of GPSEG members. What I hear most often is that the busiest people, the people who you think never have time to sit down and talk with you, are the ones people say help them. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big part of it, is making time for other people and really thinking about others.
What's the criteria for becoming a member of GPSEG?
There are 3 objective criteria. One is you have to have been in business about 20 years. You have to have reached a C-level position, so CEO, CFO, COO, and so on. And you have to have earned about $150,000 annually, $100,000 if it's a nonprofit organization. And that doesn't have to be your current salary. We often find that people are coming to the organization with that in their background at some point. Then you apply for membership and are interviewed by our membership committee. And that interview is really about whether this is the right organization for you. Do you understand how it works? Is it going to work for you? And will you be a contributing member?
Just as a follow-up, and in the interest of full disclosure, both Kimon and I are members of GPSEG. As a follow-up, is it true that many people come to GPSEG because they happen to be in transition at the time, or not necessarily so?
I think it is the most frequently cited reason for why someone refers someone else to the organization. And when I've asked members how they came to be members, often that was their situation at the time that they sought membership and joined. The majority of our members are not in transition. The majority are full-time employed people. I think part of that is that there were shifts in the economy, of course, recently that caused a lot of people to be out of work, and there are things that happen in the region's economy that cause more people to be in an outplacement process. A lot of our referrals come from those kinds of organizations, as well as from friends and colleagues who say, well, hey, you could benefit by being part of this organization. They really have a program that does specifically help people in that situation, as well as the broader business community. So it's a good place for people to come if they're in that situation, but it's not the majority of members.
Kimon and I have focused on life science, biotech, pharma as areas of interest for us, and therefore people have been referred to us who are in transition in those areas, primarily coming out of big pharma.
Right.
And what those folks have told us is, I had a great network when I was employed for 25 years in this pharma, but my network was a vertical, and everyone knew me within my pharma company. No one, I wasn't known with the competitors, and if I was, it was only within cardiology or neurology or infectious disease. It was not across the spectrum. Do you find that after people experience a broader networking experience like GPSEG, maybe when they're in transition, would you say that may be why you retain so many folks after their in transition experience stops, Diane?
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I think of it a little bit like the expression, it takes a village from the book. It really is like that. GPSEG is like a little village. I think of it sometimes like the individual version of the Chamber of Commerce, right? You know, people are individual members rather than members as businesses. But because we have that diverse background, that people really do need to connect with all those different kinds of industries, not just to find their next job, but most of us need accountants, lawyers, doctors, printers, you know, you name it. And the best way to find those people is when you have some basis for getting a referral. You know, you might go to the internet now to see, you know, how many stars something got, or you know, what kind of comments people got to go to a movie or a book. Well, when you're hiring someone as a professional, you need that sort of criteria too. What I think is so fascinating about the model that GPSEG has is that because it has that cross-section, it's very likely that you're going to find trusted referrals in a variety of areas, but you're also going to find people whose networks, if in fact what you say is true, and I think you reflect very correctly the way a lot of people have built their networks historically, suddenly what they really do need is an expanded network. So if you come to a place where there's 1,400 other people who all have that vertical network, suddenly your network is exponentially rounded. And I think that gives you a huge leg up. I was very privileged to work in the association community because, as you might know, there's an association for everything. So when I broke my hand, I called my colleague who ran the association for the Society for Surgery of the Hand, right, and said, you know, tell me where I can get a good doc. And you know, you can have that kind of experience in GPSEG of think about, you know, I need this kind of expertise, that kind of expertise, or I want a fresh pair of eyes, you know, who's not from my industry. So I think that is the way it works really successfully, and I think more people are realizing that.
And I don't think the internet is ever going to replace GPSEG. I mean, yes, you can get online and see a 5-star rating for this provider or that provider, but if you don't have personal knowledge, or if someone you know does not have personal knowledge, I think that's a distant third or fourth or fifth selection as opposed to the person who I have personal knowledge of.
Because don't you wonder, you know, how did that come to be?
Exactly.
Who paid them to put that referral on or whatever? You know, you just don't know what you can trust if you don't have knowledge.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Great point. Diane, why does GPSEG have value? Why is it of value?
Well, because of that broad network, for one thing. Also because what I think people realize as a result of just the evolution of our economy, maybe it was always this way, but these are the times we live in, so I use that as a reference point. You have to be a lifelong learner in order to really succeed. The positions that are available now didn't even exist 20, 25 years ago. So we have to constantly be preparing ourselves for what's next. We live now in an economy where I think people are almost all entrepreneurs, really. You don't have that confidence that the job you're in is going to be there 5 years, 10 years, because people who had that sort of trust had it interrupted by mergers and acquisitions, changes in industry, globalization that has displaced a lot of workers. So we have to think of ourselves as a brand that we market and protect, and that we think about how to build that network, how to promote ourselves in a way that's not so self-promotional, really, but how to make others aware of the skills that we have, how to find platforms where we can demonstrate our skills. GPSEG has all of that. It has lifelong learning by having all the professional development events and activities. Obviously has the network, as we've discussed. But it also has people who have varying outlooks and varying backgrounds and their own networks to tap into around those same things. And we're bringing a regional business outlook speaker twice a year. We're bringing socials where people have that opportunity. We're bringing individual expertise in all the functional areas, and sometimes those are collaborative and sometimes they're closed. But we also have people who will sit down and honestly critique one another's business models in our entrepreneurial circle. So all of those things go to getting kind of an honest appraisal from somebody, which is sometimes hard to get. You know, oftentimes you'll sit down with somebody and say, well, you know, will you look at my resume? And they'll say, oh, this looks great. You did a great job. Well, in GPSEG, people are pretty honest because they know how helpful that is. When you say, well, I wouldn't put it that way. I would focus over here. I would reposition this. Resumes don't look this way. We help our members know what kinds of technologies are in vogue now for them to, what kind of apps they can use, what kind of approach they should use in leveraging LinkedIn or Facebook or some of the social media, what to be cautious of. So I think all of those are practical skills that you need on an ongoing basis, and it's great when you can sit around and enjoy the colleagues in a friendship,
Sure.
and do that at the same time.
So how does GPSEG add value to the communities which it serves?
Well, as I mentioned, we have such a premium on giving back. There's a couple of specific ways that we really have focused on doing that. One is a mentorship program. We have members who, for example, participate in Temple University's Be Your Own Boss Bowl. They help these students with business plan development, assessment of their plans, participate in the competition and help them, if they don't win, figure out, maybe what to do with their plan or maybe whether it's viable. We also have ongoing mentorships in other universities. Recently we participated, this was also at Temple, in something called Tech Connect, where there were entrepreneurial students and faculty connected with the business school who had products and businesses they wanted to bring to market. Our members come with not necessarily product expertise, but general business expertise, how you attract capital, how you look at a business plan from a financial perspective, how you market it, how you test it, all of those aspects that often you don't think about when you're a young person with a great idea who just wants to, be the next Steve Jobs or something. So we do that. We also do community service projects. We have a nonprofit subgroup that is the group that spearheads a lot of those. Most of our members are engaged in volunteer work, charitable organizations, philanthropic endeavors, and so forth.
So with some of our members who may be in transition, how does explain this power of volunteerism as it would relate to somebody in transition, please?
That to me is one of the unsung and underappreciated activities that one can and should get into. Volunteer organizations, first of all, are always judged on their ability to give the maximum they can to the direct mission, right? We learn as donors, judge to make sure that they're not spending too much on administration. Well, one of the unintended consequences of that is these organizations often then don't have much investment in the capacity building of their organization, in technology, in systems and structures. Business people can bring that expertise and donate it and volunteer to be the treasurer, to be the strategic planner, facilitator, to be any of a number of roles. And that gives a person an opportunity to first contribute, give back, but secondly, to have a whole new network of people. You're going to run into people who maybe your kids all are in the same soccer team and you have a chance to, confer over that. A colleague of mine joined a swim team and suddenly found his lawyer and accountant out of it. Somebody else got a job, because of a community organization where they both served on the same board and got business from it because people realized his business experience and then hired him as a consultant. So I think there's a lot of ways in which you can demonstrate your expertise. It's a lot easier to show than tell what you can do. You can present, you can demonstrate your facilitation skills, your people skills in a volunteer organization. I highly recommend that people think about volunteering always as a stepping stone.
Now, I would think if you were in transition, for example, and you come to me saying, Charlie, can you promote me to folks you may know within this industry? I would say, sure. But if I can say, I have worked alongside of Diane with this, let's say this business plan down at Temple, and I have seen Diane in action, and here's the value she added, that's a lot, that is a lot better validator than you've got a nice resume.
Absolutely. And the person making the reference, you as my referral, feel that you really have a leg to stand on.
You speak with conviction.
There's nothing worse than if you recommend me and I go and I fail. And then the person you made the referral to comes back and says, Charlie, did you know she blah, blah, blah?
Yeah.
And you're like, no, I had no idea that she couldn't actually, put two words together and make a sentence, or I had no idea that her math was so bad. She said she was a bookkeeper, so I believed her.
Or she found a job 3 months ago. Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's exactly right, is that if you can show those skills, then people have a great amount of trust in their ability to recommend and refer.
Thank you.
Diana, a number of people watching this evening will know of GPSEG, and maybe even some are members of GPSEG.
I hope.
What would our viewers be surprised to know about GPSEG?
First, I think they would be surprised to know that we're not primarily a transition-based organization, that we really do have the majority of our members in the organizations that that they're employed, gainfully employed. I think they would also be surprised to know how rooted in the community and how much our members give back. I think we tend to think of networking organizations, if we haven't been a participant in an organization like this, I think we'd be really surprised at how much it's about giving to others than, what can I go and get for me? That surprised me, certainly, as I came to understand the organization better, how it wasn't just said, it was really believed and implemented. And then the other thing I think would be surprising is how many of our volunteers, many of whom, as I said, are gainfully employed, and we're all workaholics these days, right? We work from home, we work at night, we work weekends, so these are busy people. They are planning all of our programs. All the events and programs that GPSEG puts on, and as I said, there's at least one a day pretty much, are all put on by other people. I'm not doing the event planning. We have some administrative support, but these really are driven. They go out and get the speakers.
The volunteers do.
The volunteers do. And so I think the amount of work that people are actually contributing toward one another's professional development is an enormous investment. And they do it willingly. I'm amazed. It's like they have a part-time job with us, and I'm grateful for it.
That's wonderful.
Diane, you have experience in many different metropolitan areas, and we have probably about 1 minute left in the show, so
okay,
I'll
be quick.
A quick answer. I can think of Atlanta and Washington, D.C. as two areas where you've experienced their metropolitan area as well as Philadelphia's. What do you see top-level challenges and opportunities in the Philadelphia marketplace for executives who may be building a business or wanting to be part of a vibrant business community?
Sure, and only been here about 7-8 months, so I say that with ability to be disproven. But what I found is a community that really respects being here. People love this city, and they care about it, and they take pride in it. And they, therefore, I think, are inclined to support businesses that are being started by people in their community. I think we want to see that thrive and grow. A lot of other areas, certainly Washington is more a transient community, it's more government focused, but Philadelphia I see as really being a very vibrant local focused community. People have been here for years, they don't want to leave, they really don't want to be sent to a new location, they want to come here, they raise their families here, they return here from other places.
We're a destination.
It's a huge, and it's right there on the 95 corridor between two major cities, Washington and New York, both of which are too expensive to live in, if you ask me. So it's a great location that way, and I think that it offers a lot of growth as we think going forward. I know Philly was hard hit in some areas by the recession, but I think that it's really coming back. I think we're going to find a lot of investment. The innovation in healthcare here, the number of universities here, that's a tremendous asset that I think Philly is just beginning to see how much can come of that, and I think it's a bright future ahead.
It is. Well, we know their challenges, but we're going to leave the show on a high note
okay.
Because we're out of time. So I think you would be very valuable guest to return to the show sometime in the near future, Diane, and I really appreciate, as does Kimon, my co-host, the time you spent with us this evening.
Thank you for having me. It was
Absolutely.
a delight.
Absolutely. Kimon, thank you.
Always a pleasure.
I want to remind our viewers that next week, John Bogle from the Vanguard Group is going to be with us. And until next time, remember, your money matters.